Hello, everyone. Welcome to Patriots 3, Life, Liberty, Pursuit of Happiness. And here's your host, Tim, and our special guest, Dr. Sheila Furey. Dr. Sheila, how you doing today?
I'm great, Tim. Thank you for having me back.
And you're very welcome. We're hoping to have Tanya on. She's having some technical difficulties in the background, so hopefully she'll be joining in soon. But a quick shout out to my friend, Pastor Jerry Cook with Politics in the Pulpit. Be sure to catch that on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific time on KHTS in Santa Clarita. And you can also catch it on Rumble. So follow Politics in the Pulpit on Rumble, and you'll see his wonderful face there. So that's how you can catch the replay without the radio station commercials. So we definitely have a lot to go over tonight. Dr. Sheila and myself, we're going to be covering a recent measles outbreak over in Pennsylvania. We're going to be talking a little bit about the CDC Director saying that the mRNA vaccines are safe. It's not a vaccine. We're going to be talking a little bit about HAARP. Interesting enough. We're going to be talking about bioscreening in children, data centers, and definitely a lot more. I mean, we talked about so much yesterday, Dr. Sheila. Wow. I mean, we definitely can touch up on so many different subjects. And Dr. Sheila has an event coming up, actually. So we will definitely be talking about that later toward the end of the show. 2020, there's all these elections. 2021, there's this pandemic that broke out, and there's like two different sides of the coin there. There was the people that were for the vaccines, and the people were like, wait a minute, this has not been tested. There's the all these different trials. Come to find out that none of the vaccines have been placebo tested or double-blind placebo tested. And it's it's very unfortunate. Every time celebrity, movie star, or somebody who passes away, the first thing that pops in my mind, did they get that darn vaccine? And this is very unfortunate. We've lost a couple of celebrities in the past couple of days. God rest their souls. But they were I know one of them was definitely promoting the vaccine. So Dolly Parton was a really wonderful woman. She did a lot of great things. Not just for the Country Music Society, but for different communities. And wow, what a tragic loss. And I just wish that some people would be more cautious and aware of what they're putting into their bodies. And that's something I want to bring up here. I saw an actual post this morning in regards to a doctor in the state of Maine, and it was really good to see that there was some pushback in that state because I was living there. So Dr. Mrna Vax, an internal medicine physician and outspoken critic of official COVID-19 policies, told the Defender, I was eagerly moved forward with a legal case to clear my name and defend a free speech, right of medical practitioners to tell the truth to their patients, especially if it goes against government or medical, what's that say?
Orthodoxy.
Wow. Yeah, my eyesight's bad.
Sorry.
I'm roughly at a 20/60 right now. But anyways, yeah, so it's really good to see that some areas are continuing to win in these this terrible long 5-year journey battle. And wow, what a long 5 years has been.
This is a really important case, Tim. So Meryl Nass, not only did they strip her of her medical license, they wanted her to go through remedial training, and the remedial training, this is an expert. This is somebody who's testified before Congress, all right? Yeah. And what she was doing was saving lives in Maine. Yeah. All right. There were no patient complaints against her. None.
Wow.
And yet, because she spoke the truth, she spoke against the medical establishment about treatment of COVID and against, the mRNA gene therapy shot, the Board of Medicine in Maine stripped her of her medical license. And so this is really an important thing, that doctors must fight this. And we do have a First Amendment right.
Yeah.
And we have a First Amendment right to speak what we want to say, but our patients also have the same right to hear what we have to say. And by the, simply muzzling of Dr. Naz, it prevents patients from hearing another opinion.
Yeah.
And so how can you have true informed consent if you are not allowing all of the options on the table? Right. So informed consent is about the risks, the benefits, and the alternatives. Yeah. And if you can't hear, if you're only hearing one size fits all medicine, that's not the practice of medicine. No. That is a bureaucratic mandate. Right. And that mandate is what killed people.
Yeah.
And the coercion of the government, and the government deliberately got celebrities. So Dolly Parton in the country music world, so a woman that was loved internationally, all right, to be a spokesman for the vaccine, the so-called vaccine, all right, gene therapy. Yeah. But I remember specifically Hank Aaron, because I was a big baseball fan, and that he got the shot, and he died shortly after getting the shot.
Yeah.
And so what people aren't looking at is all of these people who promoted it,
right,
and they're now dying.
Right. A quick little disclosure: we are not promoting or practicing medicine. We encourage everybody to seek medical advice. Do not listen to what we say as medical guidance or advice. This is for informational or entertainment purposes only. So just to cover our rear ends here, I forgot about that. Whoops. So yeah, so let's go ahead and continue here. I mean, there's a lot of areas that we're promoting it. I mean, Stephen Colbert and a lot of celebrities that don't realize that they're, and Dolly Parton, she openly admits that she was a role model, and she absolutely was. And before you become a role model to certain things, we hear, certain people getting kicked off of music bands, or, completely getting shunned, like the Dixie Chicks did, for speaking their minds out openly. And I believe as Lindsey Buckingham got dismissed from Fleetwood Mac because he spoke his mind about politics. But that's in regards to politics. But when it comes to talking about medicine, wow, yeah, don't do it, please.
And the power of the industrial complex. Yeah. So the government, in direct collusion with the media, and we saw the shutdown of Twitter and Facebook and this, but they were calling exactly who was going to be a winner and a loser. The amount of control that the government had in COVID and continues to have is really alarming and should really frighten everyone.
Yeah, it should be really, really frightening. So I want to play a short little video clip my friend Frank Tortorici posted yesterday in regards to this hyper-focused situation going on in Pennsylvania regarding measles. And then I have a website to share shortly after.
The Matrix never disappoints. 2 measles deaths reported in Pennsylvania yesterday. And of course, the headline news everywhere, they were unvaccinated. But then when you do a little digging and you try to find out some other history on the 2 that passed away from the measles that were unvaccinated, you can't find anything else. It's due to privacy and HIPAA laws to protect the families. But they can report that they were unvaccinated. Now, I don't know if I have to tell you this, but if you lived through COVID and now you're seeing all the other attacks coming at us, prepare yourself, but also know that from the elite, the powers that be, the pharmaceutical mafia, this is in fact an IQ test. Let's wait to see if they release any of their information on their age. Were they immunocompromised? Did they have a vitamin A deficiency? Ooh, vitamin A deficiency. You should look into that. Anyway, proceed about your day, but please keep your head on a swivel. and stay awake, aware, and alive. Because there's a lot of beautiful things this life has to offer. We just have to overstand the matrix.
That was my friend Frank Tortorici with Fit Over Pharma. Wonderful man. And he's actually a co-host for a podcast called the Overstood Human Podcast. I'll go ahead and put those links in. But we were talking, Dr. Sheila, about newborns don't even get vaccines like that for the measles.
Yeah, the measles, the MMR shot is given traditionally at 12 to 18 months of age.
Yeah.
And so what happened here, so there's a measles outbreak in Pennsylvania. There has been one here in Virginia.
Yeah.
And what was interesting here in Virginia is that the director of the Virginia Department of Health recommended giving the MMR at 6 months of age with a repeat shot 1 month later, 28 days later. All right. There's no evidence to support that.
Right.
Right. And in fact, the MMR is given at 12 to 18 months of age, but then it's given again at 4 to 6 months, is 4 to 6 years. So not within 28 days. And so you're giving, it's 3 shots in one, measles, mumps, and rubella. All right. And you're already giving this to children who are already getting 3 to 4 shots, which is probably 12 vaccines at that 6-month checkup. And now you're going to add another one. So what you have to look at is not only the toxicity of an individual shot, but what's the cumulative toxicity of all of these given together. And so the work of James Lyons Weiler and Paul Thomas is excellent in this, and it's looking at aluminum toxicity in these children. But the aluminum is only one of the neurotoxic elements in these vaccines. But we're just, it's like, it's all safe and effective. We should just assume that everything is okay. And why would the government lie to you? Why would the CDC lie to you? Well, the CDC is compromised. It's compromised, and the entire medical establishment is compromised by big pharma.
Yep.
And so even medical practices are compromised because of the amount of kickback they receive from the childhood vaccine schedule.
Yeah.
And if, X percentage of their practice is vaccinated, then all the doctors within the practice get a bonus. And so what's alarming about this is that you even see this not only in pediatric practices where you get fired if you don't take the schedule, but even in adult practices. And I had a patient of mine who's in his 80s who called and said they want to give me a tetanus shot. And I'm like, you have 0 risk factors.
Right.
There is no need for you to get a tetanus shot. And so, and they're even doing it for parents who want to come in and see their new grandchildren. If you haven't had a recent DTaP, well, let's have that right now before you can see your grandchild. So the effect is you're giving a shot as if it's going to protect the newborn child, when in fact it's going to do nothing.
Right. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy. And it's like that mask theory, if I wear a mask, yeah, it'll help you out. But
I mean,
go ahead.
It is, I continue to see patients or people in public in mask.
Yeah.
And even in 95s again. All right. And so it's really disturbing to me how they continue to promote this. And what we see is these continual outbreaks of COVID and flu in non-traditional times.
Yeah.
And what we have right now is I've heard that there's this outbreak of the flu in August, in the summer. Yeah. We never heard of this.
Nope.
All right. But they're vaccinating all year long.
Well, and recently they're approving the mRNA version of what they call a flu vaccine, but this is not, the mRNA is gene therapy. It is not a vaccine.
Correct.
And even when it came to the flu vaccine, that was always a gamble of what strain it was going to be. Is it going to be, this strain, that strain, which of the, dozen strains of flu are out there that it might be, because it's, constantly morphing into something different as far as its, flu type. So that was always a gamble.
It's always a gamble. And, the Cleveland study was very important in that. And, it happened at the Cleveland Clinic, and they looked at the employees who took the flu vaccine and those who did not. And they found that the employees that did take the flu vaccine were sicker.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're looking at giving this universally, and you're adding another dimension of using mRNA, all right? Yeah. Because the delivery system in the lipid nanoparticle allows you to that material to go to every organ system in the body.
Yeah.
And so again, the risk and what are the consequences of this delivery system that's going to every organ system in the body.
Right.
And again, we have to look at what is the impact of delivering this to the ovary and the testes. And right. We saw this, and we see this epidemic of infertility,
yeah.
of miscarriage, and it continues. So the people want to say that, that just was around the time of COVID, that it's all gone. The infertility crisis is real.
Yes, and it absolutely is.
And that we have to look at this, and now we're going to add another vaccine that has this, so-called vaccine that has these same properties. And again, what is going to be the long-term effect? And what we also know is that the mRNA can incorporate into our genome. And so what impact is that going to have on our overall resistance to normal infectious diseases?
Yeah. It's unknown, actually. I mean, right now, this seems the results are devastating in regards to, a compounded problem with reproductive for both male and female. We've seen a lot of, cardiac myocarditis, turbo cancers, a lot of new things that are coming out since this gene therapy with the SARS-CoV-2 mRNA gene therapy. They call it the COVID vaccine or the COVID boosters. It's not, it's gene therapy. We need to get this language correct. But we've seen more devastating results than that. I mean, kids are, falling on football fields in sports with heart conditions. This is unheard of in this high of rate. I mean, it doesn't take much, folks. Just look what's going on around you. It doesn't make sense. But getting back to where we're talking about, how much control the narrative has. That report or that thing that I showed from Frank Tortorici, that little video that he put together. Yeah, I found a little article on that in Pennsylvania. The newborn among Pennsylvania's 2 measles-associated deaths, and the county coroner disputes the label. In further reading, the county coroner found that there was I believe it was a laceration in the spleen. I'm trying to find that really quick here for y'all. Yeah, there it is, a laceration of the spleen that happened in that newborn. So that was definitely so as we mentioned earlier, or Dr. Sheila did, that the MMR, the measles vaccine, is not given to an infant at such age. And second of all, it wasn't even measles related. So these reports are just coming out false. Go ahead.
And even when you look at some of the other cases, I believe the case in Texas where the little girl died, and she wasn't treated for the pneumonia that she had, and so they had the results of the sensitivities of the pneumonia bacteria that she had back, but they didn't change the antibiotic fast enough. So there was a delay in that, and that's why she died of a very treatable pneumonia.
Wow.
And so this is when you're looking at things in a complicated way. And all of these deaths are tragic, and no one wants a child to die.
No.
But we also don't want children to die from the vaccines. We don't want children to be harmed from the vaccines. And so as we look at every single one of the vaccines given in the childhood schedule, the death rate and harm rate from the vaccine itself is higher than the disease itself.
Right. Right.
And we've amplified the death rate, so we take a single death that isn't even related to measles, but we amplify that saying, look, if you get the measles, you're going to die. So we took a disease that was relatively minor, and that most children had without incidence. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't children who had complications from measles, mumps, all right, but those were rare. And what we have is, the chickenpox parties, the measles parties, and we act like there are not interventions.
Right.
So with measles, what he alluded to is the use of vitamin A, and vitamin A can be used to treat measles.
Yeah.
And so there are interventions that can occur that are natural and don't have the same risk that the vaccine does.
Right. Yeah, the vaccine seems to be a permanent thing as more and more vaccine injury related causes are out there, and the more and more research is done. I believe part of what I have is compounded with a vaccine related injury. Yes, I have something that's called spastic paraparalysis with unknown etiology, and they've given it a handful of other names as well, but nothing is definitive as of what's been going on with me for the last 40 years. Actually, this month marks 40 years of dealing with this horrendous disorder that I have going on. But yeah, so I've been hanging around with the medical society since 1979. Yay! And I got smart and I took some medical terminologies just so I can read my own medical chart that's about 3 inches thick. And that's just the paper version. I don't even want to go into the digital. But speaking of digital, wow. You shared with me just moments before we went live about this digital ID for children, and how there's one couple that is doing their best to prevent this. So I want to bring up this little article here about no guardrails, youth sports leagues mandating digital IDs, selling children's biometrics for profit. Whoa. What's going on there, Dr. Sheila?
So this is Doug and Michelle Bottoms, and they're a Virginia couple that is fighting this. And what they brought to the forefront is that children as young as 5 years old playing, in your little pickup game of sports, that the leagues are requiring a digital ID photograph. All right. Yeah. And it's all under the guise of age verification. All right.
Yeah.
So these are 5-year-olds. Okay. They're out there. It doesn't matter what age they are. I don't care if they're 3, they're 4, they're 5, or they're 17. All right.
Right.
That digital evidence of their face, their bodies, etc., should not be taken. And the fact that they're not only taking this information, they're selling this information.
Right.
So that, everything comes and it's introduced as, this is a way that we can just make sure that everybody's the age that their parents write on the form. All right. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right. You can have a birth certificate. All right. there are other ways to verify age where you do not require a biometric surveillance of the child.
Yeah.
And parents should be alarmed at this and really look into this. And additional, the making sure that the photographs that they have in school are not part of the biometric surveillance also.
Right.
That whoever takes their class photos, that is another mechanism in which their biometrics are sold.
Right. I remember when I was in my youth, getting a photo taken, and on that card had my fingerprints on it. So this was promoted by the local police department, and I believe a copy was kept at the police department and a copy was kept at home. And as a little kid, I had no idea. I had no understanding of that whatsoever. But when it comes to this digital stuff, I mean, it's really frightening, especially with, all this fun little stuff called data centers that are popping up, and they're not little, they're big. And so, we're talking about Pennsylvania and that measles outbreak earlier. Well, I found this wonderful little article here saying Pennsylvania moves to Rein in AI data centers after community backlash. That is just, is this measles outbreak a distraction of that? I mean, I'm not asking you, Dr. Sheila. This is for the audience. It's just, come on, the smoke and mirrors, look at this explosion over here while, this other thing's going on behind your back.
Right. We need all of your data because it's for your own good, right?
Yeah.
We need to track you and every move that you make because it's for your good. No, this is not. These data centers are exploding in Virginia. As we know, we are the number one. We have more data centers in Virginia than any other country in the world. Wow. And they're building them. And I just moved out of the city of Richmond into the country. And we just found out that they want to build 2 data centers near where we just moved.
Wow.
Not 1, but 2. The community doesn't want it. And as you look at the environmental impact of these data centers, and they all do it under the guise of this will bring employment to the community. It will have jobs for the community. This is a wonderful thing. And it will allow you to have better access on your cell phone. This is all smoke and mirrors.
I mean, okay, they're trying to sell it as a convenience thing. I mean, there's absolutely no safety. In my opinion, these data centers are a national security breach, or it's not the potential, it's when will it happen? Because when will people be able to get these, or when's it going to get hacked? And we've heard Sony getting hacked, we've heard Capital One getting hacked, we've heard AT&T recently getting hacked with less than a year ago. Google, I mean, you name the corporation, they're getting hacked. This is a national security threat to the better interests of the people. When's it going to stop? When are we not going to sell our land to the big corporation? I mean, pharma is already sold out as the big corporation itself. Unfortunately, some doctors have bought into it and celebrities have bought into it. But when are we going to say enough is enough? When is it going to be we are not for sale?
And when are we going to, this is all attempts, to dumb down society. All right. Yeah. And we actually are seeing in schools a pushback where parents say, we don't want our children to have a computer. We don't want our children to have a laptop at all in school. Right. And I think this is really a good change because it's even as basic as swiping to the left and right rather than turning a page, is dumbing down our ability in our brain.
Yeah.
And the importance of memory. And, you and I are both old enough to know how many things that we could remember when we were a kid. And that exercise of memorizing material and having access to that is critical because you're building a foundation in which to build other information. And when kids don't have to memorize, when they don't have to read because they can do everything by audio, you can manipulate them in any direction you want because they they're limiting their cognitive reasoning ability by spoon feeding them the answers.
Yeah. And that is not how things are done. Now you gotta interact with the child, get them to interact actually. What did you just learn from this sentence, paragraph, chapter? Is there a moral behind it? Not just the spoon-fed information, because it just goes in one ear out the other, or into their eyes that are getting blinded by this artificial light. It's not healthy.
And it also minimizes the importance of failure. All right. It is important to fail. It is important not to get it right. And it's important to go through that process of reasoning and learning and looking at it again. When I work with kids, I often tell them, if you get the wrong answer, it's my job to understand why you made those decisions and then help you in the reasoning process and guide your footsteps again. So failing is an opportunity to learn.
Yes.
And even when you fail over and over again, every time that you fail, it opens up another window in order for you to learn.
Absolutely right. This is part of cognitive learning, and also critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents are taking that away by saying, here, have a phone, watch your YouTube, or play your little games. And unfortunately, it started with the video game era. Here's your video game system. And I played the video games a little bit when I was younger, but it wasn't my everyday everything to do. Definitely got plenty of outside playtime. But parents, wake up.
Yeah, it's really important. And I think even when we introduce these electronics at younger and younger ages, particularly, 2-year-olds, 1-year-old, they can hold it in their hand. They're looking at phones, and it's 12 inches or less from their face. All right. What impact does that have on their eyes? And the development of more and more kids are, because the screens are so close to them, they're losing their depth perception. Yep. All right. And their sensitivity and development to the entire color spectrum. Right. Wow. Because the colors on the screen are bright. They're designed to draw your attention to that. But in nature, colors are often very subtle. And to be able to see the subtle differences and variations in those colors is because of eye development. And are we limiting, again, that? So you're handing somebody what you think will be, the babysitter, or it's really good for them because they're learning something from the screen.
Yeah.
But in fact, we're limiting their cognitive development, their brain development, their vision development. Yeah. And one of the things that even in sports have been noticed for kids who are on screens is they're losing peripheral vision. So the injuries, in fact, can increase rather than decrease because of their times on the screen.
So looking at this little screen is putting on permanent blinders. So they're not able to see in their peripheral.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that part.
So when you look at basketball, soccer, all of these things, and I, as a kid, I remember playing basketball and having to do exercises to strengthen our peripheral vision so that we could see the player who was to our left and right. Yeah. And being sensitive to that so you could rotate and know exactly where they are.
Yeah. Or even that wonderful game called dodgeball, and I can still hear that red rubber ball on my face. Goodness, that was terrible. But yeah, this is definitely teaching you your peripheral. Wow. So with all these digital IDs and all these educational materials being data, where are they being stored at? Data centers? Is this our new banking system? Is this our new learning center? Is this our storage for everything? because we're definitely not keeping this in our little localized hard drives at home. All this information, we're just, our educational packets, it's not on this little tiny hard drive that I have in my hand here. It's not on this little flash drive I have here. The people need to take, step up and be responsible for their own, not have these data centers all over the place. And what the screen I just flashed, and I'll put it back up again, Erin Brockovich has a website out about the data centers in the communities and what she's doing to fight up against it. And, I definitely encourage people to look a lot closer into these things than what, these companies are just, trying to push out. Oh, these things are safe. These things don't impact your water. Well, why are they putting these data centers next to these lakes and rivers if it's not impactful to our water system?
Correct.
If they don't need water to cool, they're self-cycling, so on and so forth. They're not. They should be in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, or middle of nowhere, Utah, where there's nothing there.
Or they shouldn't be.
Correct. Yeah. It's just it's
the information that they're getting for these things is not being used to help the average citizen. All right, and along the same lines as the flock cameras and the exponential increase in flock cameras.
Yeah.
And who owns the data? I think that's one of the questions for both of these centers.
Yeah.
Is the data centers, but also the flock cameras. Who owns that data? And how long is it stored? And who stores it? And is it safe? So your question, Tim, earlier, and your hypothesis is, what if this gets hacked? So what if these cameras get hacked? Okay. Right. Who's tying into them? And what is the impact of that on everyday citizens?
Right. Yeah. So it's, and flock is getting the dirty name because it's just a common name. But there's more than just flock.
Correct.
So let me point out there's Axon, there's Motorola Systems, Vigilant is, I believe, the sub name here. Recor Systems, Genetic, which is AutoVu is, I believe, the brand name. And then Bricata and Evangelion, if I'm pronouncing that proper. But, this flock is definitely getting the dirty end of the stick. I've actually seen some cameras that are not flock here in the little town that I live in. There's just on one side of town, there's one camera facing north and then another camera facing south on the same street light. Now, it's collecting a lot more data than what people think. Some of these things actually have Bluetooth built into them. And every time someone with Bluetooth, your Bluetooth is on your phone, it's actually capturing that unique Bluetooth identification. People, watch out. Sheriffs, get rid of these things.
Yeah, your constitutional sheriff needs to step in and end this. Yes. Yeah.
And that's why I bring that up, because who's contracting these things? The sheriffs are. City councils, the county sheriffs, and people need to step up and speak up and get rid of these things. But yeah, when I saw it was one of the flock camera websites, it did show that the flock brand is not the flock brand that's here, but it did show that there's cameras here in the little town that I live in. Yeah, so again, people need to step up and wake up. I follow one of my friends, Ashley, over in Indiana. There's a DFlock Fort Wayne, I believe, is the Facebook group, and she's doing a fantastic job. She got 900 signature petitions and delivered that right over to her city council. So I definitely applaud Ashley for doing that. Getting signatures is not easy, because I did quite a bit of it for the recall efforts against Gavin Newsom back in 2020 and 2021. So I definitely applaud Ashley for doing what she has done and is continuing to do there in Indiana.
And so along this lines, in my small town, the cost is $2,500 per camera for X amount of time. And so now the town has decided we're not going to continue that contract. but the cameras are still in place. So the question becomes, what if somebody buys the contract and says, okay, I'll pay, $7,500 a month or a year for all the data that you get on those cameras. So it's not just your license plate, it's the make, model, and year of your car. It's who's in the car, all right? And it'll have facial recognition of who's in the car, all right? So all of this information can be absolutely used for nefarious purposes.
Well, even if that information is correct, yeah, I've seen a couple of different videos to where they're using these flock camera systems to say so and so in this vehicle, license plate, so on and so forth, was at one location when he was like a couple 100 miles away. Or another lady was accused of stealing a package off a porch, and it wasn't her because she was nowhere near. And you're automatically guilty until proven innocent when it comes to these systems.
That is correct.
So it's terrible because it's, with that alone is not constitutional. My Tuesday co-host Matt, which unfortunately is not going to be here this coming Tuesday. He's has some other obligations to tend to on September 1st, but he was a former police officer in Los Angeles. You can scan through 10,000 license plates in less than a minute, and is wonderful, hands-free, very convenient. I understand his point of view as being a police officer. Wonderful to go through a lot of license plates in a short amount of time. But on the other hand, what's it all violating? You're scanning like innocent person. I don't know. It just, I'm back and forth with it. It's great for in the right hands, but I've also heard police officers using it to stalk their ex-girlfriends or stalk their ex-wives or spouse or whatever. I don't know. What is that? The road to evil starts with good intentions.
And you're correct. And what prevents them from inserting and manipulating the data that's on the camera?
Yeah.
All right. So you do, a clip, you insert that in, and then that's the evidence that you're presenting in court when it isn't valid evidence. Right. And how many people know to go back and say, well, we need to, find out if this was truly, a concurrent run of the video, or whether it's a video footage that was inserted. And we don't know to answer those questions because we're so stunned when this happens. So if they knock on your door and say that you're under arrest and you have no idea what you're under arrest for, but now again, you're guilty until proven innocent.
Right. And there's another question too, is how long is this data stored?
Yes.
Indefinite? 1 week, 3 weeks? It just, again, what is the purpose of these data centers?
And will it be integrated with your medical record?
Okay, so digital medical records that came on strongly, 10 years ago, roughly? Mm-hmm. I know some of my records were lost during the transition. There's old films that are not digitized, and they refuse to find them, which is ridiculous. Thank you, Santa Clara County. It's again, so according to HIPAA laws is 7 to 10 years, and then they can destroy the records as far as medical is concerned. No, but now we're just talking about the children's IDs with sports, digital IDs, driver's license, the real ID, that's digital. But I mean, again, how long, our voter information, that's all becoming digitized because all our elections are fed through these other machines. I mean, we're being sold out to the machine.
And it's really important to keep the human face. When you make a phone call to a company and you get a computer, but there's no way to avoid the computer, you have to answer the questions in order to get to a real live person.
Yeah.
And when you go to the grocery store or any place, you've got all of these endless self-checkout lines. All right. But what is that doing? It's destroying the work environment.
Yes.
And so people have lost their jobs, but purpose in life. All right. And an entry level job, and the importance of entry level jobs in order to gain skills so that you can move up the ladder.
Yep.
And now this is all lost.
It is.
And it's so disheartening, particularly for people who are in a lower socioeconomic class. They have no mechanism to get into the system because they are systematically being replaced. And is this all part? We're going to replace your jobs. We're going to disenfranchise you. We're going to make you depressed and anxious because you don't have a job. You're trapped in your house. And now when you reach out to substances and abuse those, or you're depressed and anxious and we give you drugs, when all you really wanted was a job.
Yeah, this is some of the reasons why A, I do not use self-checkout. B, I quit Amazon completely. I found that kill switch, and I do not use Amazon whatsoever. I never signed up for Temu or any of that stuff. I like that in-person human interaction. Save a job, stay away from self-checkout. Same thing goes with the online orders.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the theater, see that person at the concession stand. Go, and while you're going to see that movie, you're taking a friend with you, or a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it may be. Yeah, do the in-person thing. Quit doing this, Netflix and chill. No, that's not interaction with other people. Because when you're going out to the movie theater, you're amongst a group of people, a crowd.
And it's really important to have that contact, and that we have become so isolated. And I think one of the things I see where the greatest harm is, and particularly since COVID, is the number of patients who are isolated, and they fear to this day, my interactions with others. If I go out, do I have to wear a mask? Or they haven't driven on a regular basis anymore, so they want to give up their driver's license. All right. So the independence, particularly in our aging population, that is really predicated on relationships and seeing in real life those people, is what keeps people alive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's called a healthy social activity. It's something that I learned about when I was, I believe, in middle school, and in earlier years of high school. And that's kind of faded out, especially with this last 5 years. This whole pandemic, lockdown, wear a mask. I mean, the masks, that's just something completely detrimental, because it took away a lot, especially the learning abilities of children and infants, because everyone requires that facial interaction, as well as the verbal, the tone that's being used. And if there something's covering up someone's mouth, it's hard to say. You can only see so much of a smile with someone's eyes. Let me see if I can do that without covering my microphone.
Correct.
Yeah.
And when they did studies of children looking at this, and children, the loss of speech and language development, and what emotions could they recognize with the eyes. All right. And so there were some that were, happy and then angry, but you had the extremes, and that's not really where we're at. And as human beings, and that isn't what we want to teach our children. What we want is an ongoing expression that comes with love. And so you can be stern, but with a smile on your face, and the kids know, okay, I get it. You really want me to do that, but you're not so angry that I know that I'm about to be grounded. Okay. So that there's nuances of that.
Right.
And so that the child doesn't learn those things. And that in particular, just how you move your mouth for different sounds.
Yeah.
They didn't comprehend that. So the amount of lost development, but the question is, was there a window, and we still don't have the full answers to this, is there a window in development where these speech and language skills, sort of imprinting, were designed to be developed, and that imprinting window was lost. I don't fully believe at this point that it is lost in totality. I think that the brain has tremendous capacity, but it is going to take specific tools for those kids who have lost those skills.
Yeah, I believe that definitely there was a gap in generations. The gap of learning in a generation was lost, or not completely lost, but it was definitely given a hindrance.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard hindrance. Yeah, all these little things that people don't think about when it came to this whole pandemic. So, health choice, liberation from mandates. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So we are having a wonderful conference on September 12th in Virginia Beach. It's Health Choice, Liberation from Mandates. And we are doing it co-sponsored with North Carolina Physicians for Freedom. And we have a full day of speakers. So we are going to be looking at the childhood vaccine schedule, as well as the adult vaccine schedule. We have Dr. Paul Merrick, who's going to be talking about innovations in cancer research and alternatives to traditional chemotherapy and radiation. Jeffrey Tucker from the Brownstone Institute will be joining us. Patrick Carrawell from HHS. So having a member of Robert F. Kennedy's team there to speak about innovations in healthcare. Charles Froman from the National Health Federation, who's been a pioneer in advocating for health freedom for decades, is going to look directly at what is the impact of EMF and data centers and all of this electronics on every human being. And so I think that's really a wonderful way to look at this. Looking at long COVID vaccine injury, and again, the entire childhood vaccine schedule. We're also going to have a wonderful panel discussion with Dr. Kelly, Dr. Chrisanna Shackelford, and Kathy Hudgens. And what I really like about this discussion that they're going to have, it's looking at our healthcare system and looking at it in terms of fear and reactivity. So we have patients who have become fearful of the mandated healthcare system. And when a patient is sick, they're often fearful about how they are going to be treated by the healthcare system. But on the flip side, we also have a healthcare system that is fearful. And so it's fearful of how am I being tracked? How fast can I get this patient out? What is my employer going to say about me? What are the objectives? What are the pharmacology pressures that are going to be put on me? How many boxes did I check? How efficiently did I check those boxes? All right. So the corporate pressure on the physician, on the healthcare, on the hospital system, as well as the corporate pressure of insurance companies. And so everyone, you throw in there medical malpractice, all right? So everyone in this encounter may be approaching it from a fear perspective. And how does that change everyone's interaction? And so the dialogue of healthcare, so that we can come in and say, I have this problem, let's look at it And together we're going to find a solution. Now becomes an adversarial relationship because we're all fighting for our own turf, and we're also fighting that fear element. And so our guardrails are up, we're defensive, and we need to, and so dialogue can be limited because of that defensive stance.
Yeah.
We're going to be blessed with having former Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears is going to be coming and talking about the family. And this is really important in Virginia as we are facing 3 constitutional amendments will be on the ballot in November. And so we have the abortion amendment, which will be unrestricted abortion and also unrestricted anything to do with so-called reproductive freedom, so which is a misnomer in and of itself. So everything, if this is constitutionally passed, any sexually related aspect of your life will be permitted. So it will eliminate parental rights. It will eliminate protection of the unborn. It will, there are very few safeguards on in vitro fertilization and surrogacy. Those will be completely, any safeguards will be gone because you can essentially have a baby and designer baby for yourself for whatever purpose you want. And this is what is really dangerous. And we've known for decades about fetal organ harvesting. And this is becoming more and more apparent that this is the goal. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And when they take fetal organs, they want them to be pristine. They want them to be intact. And so they're seeking that. And when they talk to mothers about so-called donating their tissue, they're referring to the baby as tissue, not as a baby, a fully formed living being that is going to be chopped to pieces for the so-called advancement of medical science. So it's very criminal what is going on. And we saw that, the literally evil aspect of that in Massachusetts when they now have abortion without restriction in all months of pregnancy. And all of these women stood around and applauded this. So this is really child sacrifice. And we became alarmed when Dr. Fauci did experiments on beagles. And they were horrific experiments. But we are doing the same thing on human beings. And we need to be alarmed about that. And we need to push back about that. So this entire conference has a subtitle of Operation Save Our Children. So we are looking to educate everyone, not only about protecting children in the womb, and protecting them in the womb from vaccines too, all right, but protecting them throughout all aspects of their life.
Yeah.
And alerting people to the information that is available to them, hearing it from experts, all right, and really being able to understand from a fundamental moral philosophical basis that when you devalue life, when you devalue human life and see human life as simply part of the supply chain, the impact that has on every aspect of society. And this is a dialogue that we must have. We must have it in our families. We must have it in our communities, in our churches, in our schools. And what we have right now is, well, if that's the way you feel about it, it's okay. Well, that's not true. We can't sacrifice one human being for another. And that the medical science that is achieved from this, and the doctors that are participating in this, they actually have entire articles written about we need to have the doctors better rationalize what they're doing. So where does that fall in history? This is exactly what happened in the concentration camps in Nazi Germany, where the doctors could rationalize their actions because they saw the Jewish people or the people in those concentration camps as non-human. And so what are we doing here in the United States of America, where we're supposed to be protecting people, all right? The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, all right? Not only for me, but for my posterity, okay? We want, the only way that we continue as a species is if we protect our young. And not sacrifice them for some hedonistic purpose. And this is why, and we want this to be in person. We want people to buy their tickets now. So you can buy the tickets at vamfa.org. But we want people to come to have an opportunity to dialogue, to sit and listen to experts, but then as a community, talk to other people and get their perspectives. What did they think about this? How do we engage in discussion that leads to protection of all human life? So we want to protect the unborn. We want to protect children. And in the process of doing that, we must protect even the elderly, or the sick, or the infirmed, because the medical industrial complex sees you as a dollar sign. Do you cost more than they established your value to be?
Yeah.
And this is why euthanasia, our medical assistance in dying, is growing by leaps and bounds. And it's all a disguise. And in some cases, it's a disguise directly to get your organs because you're not terminally ill. And so if we can get you to agree to your own death, like even how sadistic is even that statement?
Right.
We want you to agree to your own death so that we can have your organs.
Yeah, they disguise the language on getting your organs from you by just calling it tissue, or your unborn infant.
Yeah.
Wow. It's crafty politicians. Wow.
But this is why we do what we do, Tim.
Yeah. And this is why part of the reason why this podcast is out is to bring in information and truth. Is get it out there, get it out to the people, and people need to learn. People need to know the differences of what's going on, what mainstream media is pushing off versus what this is considered alternative media. And even when it comes to allopathic medicine versus the original medicine, there's a lot of good things with the holistic medicine that the allopathic and what is it? The big oil, because a lot of the stuff is petroleum-based pharmaceuticals. What are the differences, pros and cons? Well, you cannot patent something that's natural. And a lot of these things that are patented is for profit. And who's profiting? Big Pharma. Go ahead.
And it just really destroys the beauty of the human being.
Yes.
The intrinsic, design of every human being and every living being. Yeah. The checks and balances that are within the system, and that when we look at, natural sources of healing
Yeah.
that are designed to help your body and recognize, where there is, where there is sickness, but how healing can be provided, rather than, in many cases, just masking the symptoms in order for you to move on with your daily life.
Right. Again, there's that sellout for convenience. Put a mask on it.
Mhm.
And we shouldn't be doing that. What's the cause of my headache? Oh, I got a headache. Oh, I hadn't had enough water or not enough salt, for that matter. Salt is actually healthy, people. So, what did I eat the night before? There's a lot of little, things versus, popping a couple of, take 2 of these and call me in the morning kind of situation. It's not like that. There's a little more to it.
And that's the beauty of medicine, is that being able, and for individuals to be able to say, all right, today I might take 2, aspirin, all right, but tomorrow I'm going to really look and examine what is going on, because I might do that once, but I don't want this to be a pattern, right? And how do I give my body what it needs in order to be healthy? And that's not just, it's food as nutrition, but it's also a mental and spiritual thing.
Yes.
And we have become so disconnected from God, from our faith, and that as we look at this, it's really a lapse of morality that has, invaded our country.
Yeah.
When you take something out, the mind abhors a vacuum. Something else is going to go in and fill that space.
Yeah.
And so when we took, prayer, faith, the Bible out of school, out of our educational process, what happened was an agnostic, atheistic system without morality.
Right.
stepped in and filled that void, where morality becomes, well, it's just a personal choice.
Wow. Well, what's that saying? An idle mind is the devil's playground.
Yes.
Yeah, can be a very dangerous place. The children definitely need direction, proper direction for that matter, not some, I don't know, hodgepodge lost with no morale teachings. They definitely need a good moral compass, good teachings. So I don't know if people have noticed here on my podcast the last month. About a month ago, my little niece came over and she gave me a little pocket Jesus. You see him right here? So yes, definitely people need to have a good morale. Jesus was a wonderful teacher, and people need to take those teachings and read the Bible. Absolutely. You made mention a little earlier, you're going to have a speaker there talking about Wi-Fi frequencies and EMFs and such.
Yes, it's Charles Frohman. I just promoted him. He'll be happy about that. But he's from the National Health Federation.
Okay.
And he has been looking at the effect of EMF on our health, not only on human health, but animal health. And some of the things that they do, the trackers that they put on animals' ears. Yeah. All right. And the impact that those have on the animals, the effect of EMF on the fertility of animals. So all of the towers that we're seeing, sometimes these towers are near schools, all right, on top of schools, all right? And when you look at the towers and their link to your area, and where I used to live, there were over 300 towers and antennas within a 3-mile radius of my home.
Wow.
We went on vacation and there was 3. And you could feel it. So that the idea that these pulses and electromagnetic pulses in the atmosphere are something that the body cannot recognize is completely false. Right. We are electromagnetic beings. Yes, our cells are charged. Yeah. You know, our cells open and close doors based on charge. And so the radiation or the frequencies, etc., by these towers and antennas absolutely has an effect on our lives. And so how do we understand that? How do we deal with that? And, you know, what are the long-term implications for us as a society? And this, I'm glad you really brought this up. You just triggered me. There was the FCC has been avoiding giving the data about electromagnetic frequencies. And Children's Health Defense has sued them and said, how are you making your decisions about what is safe for the environment? Not only human environment, but animal environment, plant environment. Yeah. And the judge has ordered them to reveal their sources and how they are making these decisions. And they have 30 days to produce the evidence.
Well, this is one thing I mentioned at the beginning, and we're going to talk about briefly is HAARP, high frequency active auroral research program. Now, I heard about this back in 2005, and how that could possibly be causing weather manipulation. And there's a lot to say about that. But I'm also going to tie in a little bit about these chemtrails too, that has these little microparticles of metal and other weird things in it. Even some spores have been heard about being fungal spores in these chemtrails. Bacterium. I remember hosting a show back in January of last year about the 5 viruses found in the fog in San Francisco. Right?
Yeah. It just, so all of these nanoparticles. Yeah. So not only metals that are, dispersed throughout the atmosphere, which we breathe in, or they land on our plants and are absorbed into the plants. All right. So, and then you have HAARP. So what is it doing? So is it sending, pulses of energy into these chemtrails in order to cause and manipulate the weather? And we know that they've been manipulating the weather for decades. Right. And so why is this project continuing to be allowed?
I don't understand. I mean, certain areas could probably use a little bit of weather modification, but it's gone way too extreme. I mean, you see this haze over the sky all the time, and that's not smog, ladies and gentlemen. That is, cars are not flying in the air leaving those trails. I'll tell you that. It's not smog. There's obviously something coming off these airplanes. I believe there's one lady who actually discovered that there is actually chemicals being pushed in the air. And she actually confronted one of the pilots in her findings. I wish I had that video prepared. I'd be able to play it. But, it's just this constant, tic-tac-toe of stuff in our skies that's not healthy for us. And I think that's, some of the cause of some of these fires that are out there. And I say some of it because I also believe there's another portion behind it as well. But and we're talking from the Palisades fires, the Paradise fire, the recent one that's happened in the North Reno area. I believe it's called the Hawk Fire. There's some fires going on in Texas. There's just these fires that are unheard of, unseen. And then there's also something else that I want to bring up too is the direct energy weapons. So there's that as well. And a lot of it is funded by the U.S. military, our taxpayers' dollars.
Correct.
And that's where HAARP came about. It was actually my computer instructor, who was a former, formerly in the military in the United States Air Force. Had multiple businesses, really intelligent man. He was in his 70s at the time. Gosh, that was well over 20 years ago when I took those classes. But he was telling the class about HAARP and how it could be detrimental. And so, yeah, I totally understand the concept. I've seen some studies and research about Wi-Fi and how bad that is. I don't use Bluetooth on my phone. That's turned off, thank goodness. So I don't have these flock cameras and other likeliness to read that. But these high frequencies, there's radiation that's coming from the ground in multiple places in the United States that are not these cell phone towers, but they're, I don't know, some of these weather maps, just take a good look and you'll see where the radiation is coming about. These are not natural formations. These are man-made. But I mean, look at it yourselves, people. It's just open your eyes. Use some common sense.
Well, I think, when we look at the situation, the fire in Hawaii, and
Yes.
you have, trees burning from the inside out.
Yeah.
Right. When we look at what happened in North Carolina with the massive, the hurricane that came up, but the hurricane reorganized over North Carolina.
Right.
Hurricanes don't reorganize over landfall.
Nope.
And so, the flooding, the storm in Texas that affected the camp, all right, all of this is weather that is unheard of, and people say, well, it's all related to climate change and global warming that we're seeing all of it. No, this is direct things that are occurring because of our government interfering with the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And that has been going on for decades, and we know it's been going on. And you trace it back, and I would go back before World War II. But if we look at World War II and the use of, we had the nuclear bomb that, we dropped on Japan, Nagasaki, and Hiroshima. But we continued to do testing, and it was like, we're going to do testing. We're going to put it underground, and that way it'll be safe. So it's the same thing as safe and effective because the government said so. So it's the government is knocking on your door, and we're here to help. It means that you're running out the back door as fast as you can with the kids in tow.
Well, when it comes to these data centers, there's actually an emission of frequencies that come out of those too. And these are low frequencies that go through the ground.
Correct.
So again, here comes the frequency attack again. It's more than just our cell phone towers or these radiation towers for HAARP, and it's fun doings with the weather modification, but we're just being attacked all over the place when it comes to our healthcare.
And when you look at frequency and how far those frequency waves can travel, even through solid objects, okay, the ground, the dirt, okay. Yeah. And so think about everything that all the living beings that live underground or in the ground or tunnel underground. What effect does that have? What effect does all of the windmills that are in our oceans, right, have on the life within our oceans? And even when you see, like in Texas and other parts of the country, the huge windmill farms and the amount of death directly related to those birds, all flying insects, that are going through and being eliminated because windmills shouldn't be there.
Right. Yeah, I remember driving through the Panhandle a little less than 3 years ago. Panhandle of Texas, just littered with those darn windmills. Absolutely disgusting. And speaking of flying insects, our most precious pollinator, the honeybee. If that goes, there goes our planet. There's no doubt about that. Because that's what pollinates our food, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
It doesn't happen on its own. Yeah, there is some cross-pollination with wind, but as far as the mass producing that we're so used to, yeah, that mass production is gone. And we're talking, maybe 10 out of 100 will pollinate. And I'm just throwing a number out there. But I mean, I'm also thinking with some education under my belt. I grew up around agriculture. And without the pollinators, we're not going to go too far.
Yeah, it's really important that we recognize how important these are. And, when you're driving, one of the biggest things I noticed was in the city, my windshield I didn't have to clean it all the time. All right. In the country, I have to clean my windshield all the time.
Yeah.
All right. There is a massive difference. And so it's, what are we spraying? How are we spraying it? We want to eliminate everything. And then we've got the government coming in, and they're even taking our animals, the ticks, all right, and they're making the ticks more dangerous and then dispersing those into the population in the wild to harm humans.
It's bad enough we had Lyme disease.
Correct.
Goodness.
So
Wow.
as we look at, what is, the bioweapons that are made by our own government and released on our own people.
Right. Yeah, I hate to see what comes out from these mosquitoes that they're releasing. They're supposed to be non-sterile. But I mean, what's that biological impact going to turn into when it morphs into something different? It's just, people need to stop playing God. Let nature run its course when it comes to the weather, when it comes to insects, birds. I mean, electricity is all around us. I mean, we can create the Earth battery. I mean, Nikola Tesla actually created electricity to be for free. Now, the government and other entities have found a way to monopolize it and charge people. And my poor electric bill was like 3 times the amount because my AC is running like crazy right now. Last Tuesday we had to cancel the show because it was just too hot to run a show from a garage. So my co-host decided to bow out. So I totally don't blame him. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be out in that kind of temperature. I've actually had to bow out because it's, again, too hot. Yeah, we're running on a budget here, and my utility bill is like 3 times the amount. I'm like, thank you. But electricity is all around us. It's meant to be for free. It comes from the ether, comes from the ground. We hydroelectric, solar, the wind turbines. It's not the best idea out of all honesty. And actually, even the solar, there's been found some reports how it is a negative effect on the insects and birds because the birds fly over it or the insects fly over it and then they get disoriented, and it's all around not a good thing if it's used in large quantity areas like solar farms. So that's the point I was getting to, is these solar farms are replacing our natural farms, for cattle and plants and such. I'm hoping to have on another guest out of Utah on in the future, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that portion of it, especially when it comes to the cattle industry.
Yes, the cattle industry is really, really important. Absolutely. And the hits that they're taking I think are going to cause devastating effects.
Yeah, absolutely. But Dr. Sheila, where can people find, what is the website again? The Virginia Medical Alliance?
Yeah, so Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance. So it's VAMFA.org.
Okay.
So VA for Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance. So VAMFA.org. You can buy your tickets ASAP because we're down to the wire. And ticket prices will increase on September 4th. And the last day to buy tickets is September 10th. All right.
And-
And we'd love to have all your audience there.
And then you could also be found whereabouts on TikTok, on Instagram,
Instagram,
Facebook.
Facebook. So all of those, if you just put in Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance, will pop up, and all the links are also on our website.
Excellent, excellent. And I went ahead and I already posted the links into the chat, and I'll update the show's bio in the other areas.
And our Substack's also on the website.
Oh, excellent. I didn't have the Substack.
Okay.
Is that new?
Well,
It's like,
the Substack is not new,
Okay.
but if you go to the website, there's in the upper right-hand corner, it says Substack, and that'll get you right to the Substack.
excellent, excellent. Well, we definitely went over like 25 minutes over what we normally go over, but this is a really good conversation with you, Dr. Sheila. Always a pleasure to see you. Always a pleasure talking with you. We'll definitely have to do this again in the future.
All right. Thank you for having me, Tim.
Yes, thank you as well. And ladies and gentlemen, definitely be sure to check out this podcast on Tim and Holliday TV. That's TIMHOLLIDAY TV. You can find us on Rumble, YouTube, Twitch TV, Facebook, and listen on later on iHeart, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, ciao for now.